Our next in-person mastermind is coming up this fall, and we're heading to Vegas. We're kicking off this mastermind with an in-person tour at Zappos downtown Las Vegas campus, where you'll learn their strategies behind company culture, core values, employee engagement, and customer service. Looking outside the legal industry for business concepts and strategies allows you to gain fresh perspectives and innovative solutions that can be applied to improve and differentiate your firm's operations. Following the tour are the mastermind hot seats. Every attendee has the opportunity to dive deep into their business obstacles with their mastermind group and coach. We believe that nothing beats working on your firm in person, so join us in Las Vegas on November 7th and 8th. This is your chance to break through barriers, spark new ideas, and accelerate your law firm's success. Limited spots are available. Visit maxlawevents.com for full event details and to grab your ticket today.
Run your law firm the right way. This is the Maximum Lawyer Podcast. Your hosts, Jim Hacking and Tyson Mutrux. Let's partner up and maximize your firm. Welcome to the show.
Welcome back to the Maximum Lawyer Podcast. I'm Jim Hacking.
And I'm Tyson Mutrux. What's up, Jimmy?
I've just been alerted that we can only go 20-25 minutes, and that's fine with me because I got my own things to do. But I've been put on notice, so we better get started.
That's right. So I flipped the script a little bit today on who our guest is, and our guest is going to be you.
What?
Yeah. And I'm going to interview you today. I'm going to interview you about your journey a little bit. I'm going to pretend like I've never met you before, that I've got some awareness of you. And I'm going to ask you about your journey. So before I pretend all that stuff, how you doing?
I'm a little stressed. We got 4 episodes to record in the next 3 hours. And then right when we're done with the last one, I'm getting on a ride to the airport to go to Charlottesville to D.C. to drive 2 hours to Charlottesville. So it's going to be a long day.
Yeah, well, tell people why.
So my son Yusuf, he'll be a rising senior next year in the English department. He's a dual degree major. He's computer science and English, and the English department has recognized him as one of the best students, and they gave him a scholarship, and they're having a ceremony for him tomorrow. So Monty and I are flying up for that, and then coming back tomorrow.
Nice. Very cool. Congratulations to Yusuf. Excellent stuff. Yeah, you and I were talking like we've been working like dogs lately. We've been working our butts off. But all right, I want to get into this. So Jim, tell us about your journey and how you got to this point today. I want to hear a little bit about that.
I just want to punch you in the face for asking me that question.
I know.
You do. I grew up in St. Louis. I have an immigration law firm that is located a 9-minute drive from where I was born. And so it's very strange. I didn't have a passport most of my young adult life. It wasn't until I met my wife, who's originally from Egypt, who moved to Chicago when she was 7. She said, "You don't have a passport? That's crazy." So during law school, I got a passport, and I grew up Catholic, and I thought I was going to be a priest before I went to law school. I thought I was going to save the world, and eventually I left the Jesuit novitiate where I was studying in Denver, and I moved back to St. Louis. I worked for a plaintiff's law firm for 2 years, which I loved. It was the best job I've ever had. I was like the office guy, the runner. This was before the internet, so if we found a product or a lawsuit against a particular defendant that some other person had litigated, we would send a fax to the American Trial Lawyers Association in D.C., and then they would fax us back lawyers who had good documents on that defendant, and then I would drive. I drove to Birmingham. I drove to Dallas. I would go and pick up all the records. I'd go through all the records, and man, I loved it. It was a great job. When they switched me from hourly to salaried because I was making too much money because they kept paying me overtime. And then when I left, we had a huge party. It was great. When I left to go to law school, I had a huge party. I was in law school. I was on Law Journal with Imani, my eventual wife. She was the managing editor. I was the editor-in-chief. And that we graduated in 97. In 98, I converted to Islam and became a Muslim. And then in 99, we got married. And then I lost the job that I had lined up for right after our marriage, and then I went to work at a maritime firm for 7 years, where I then became a partner. And then one day I had the Michael Gerber entrepreneurial seizure, and I said to my wife, "Oh, baby, I really want to have my own law firm. I've been thinking about it for 10 years. She goes, that's funny because you've never mentioned it. And so I was sick of doing barge work. I had referred a case to Amy Gunn, and I went over to see her in trial. And actually, it ended up being a mistrial, but her client gave her a hug. And I thought, man, my clients never give me a hug. My clients are barges and insurance companies. And I said, F that. So in 2007, I told my partners that I had, actually, what happened was when I was a kid, I'd been abused by a priest. And I ended up suing the archdiocese, and we reached a nice little settlement after beating summary judgment, and I used that money to pay off my student loans. Then I went to my partners and said I'm leaving, and that's when I started the firm with the money that I had left. Amani worked at St. Louis U in the law school, and she had health insurance, and her salary was enough to pay the mortgage, and so everything else was on me. So in 2008, January 1st, we opened up, and then the rest is history. I sound like one of our guests who just talks for 15 minutes straight and doesn't let us ask any questions. So I'll pause there and let you ask me questions.
All right, so I want to hear about the early days, Jimbo. Like, what was that tipping point where you're like, okay, I've got to do this? And tell me what it was like in those early days, starting the law firm. Like, where did you have your office? Like, think about those days.
The final nail in the coffin of me being a maritime lawyer was that I had to take the deposition of the mother of a plaintiff who had been involved in a boat accident, sunk to the bottom of this lake in Oklahoma and popped back up a week later. And even though my partners were great, one of the partners was sort of tired of the case, and before I left for the deposition, he said, you go crucify that bee that's making us do all this work, the mother. And so I went down and I took the mother's deposition. I said, I am never doing this again. I was miserable. I didn't like doing discovery. I certainly didn't like working for insurance companies. And so that's what I did. I went out on my own. We rented space from some lawyers. We had a little bitty office, and I hired a young lady from Bosnia. She was 18, working at the mall selling cell phones. And I knew that I was going to have a lot of Bosnian clients because there's a lot of Bosnian immigrants in St. Louis. And we just sort of did whatever came in the door law for a while. We didn't know what we were doing. I thought I would be a lawyer for immigrants, that I would do all kinds of law for immigrants, but pretty quickly it became apparent that the real need was immigration. And so I eventually, in 2012, so it took us about 4 years to decide to just do immigration only. So since 2012, all we've done is immigration. And once I started doing immigration, I bought a Kodak Hi8 camera, and I started making these little YouTube videos with a green screen in my little office. So I'd put the camera on my desk over my computer pointing against the wall, and I would go over there and I would shoot a video. And just for videos, I would either do something that I knew, or I would do something that somebody asked me and I didn't know, and I'd go look up the answer. And I thought, well, if they have that question, someone else might have that question. So I'd make a video about the things that I learned. So really, I'm sort of self-taught with immigration. I didn't take it in law school. I didn't take administrative law. So I think that really helped me with YouTube, because I had to learn things in plain English and then it was then really easy for me to teach it to other people in plain English.
So you never had like this, like just desire to do immigration law. You had other plans, I guess, when you were in law school.
Well, yeah, certainly when in law school, I thought I was going to be a plaintiff's lawyer. Yep, for sure. But becoming Muslim and living through 9/11 and the aftermath of that was I did a lot of public speaking. They touted out the great white Muslim to go talk to all these other faith groups and to go on television. And so that built me up a lot of goodwill in the community. And then plus, because I was a litigator, I fell into this little niche of suing the government for immigration delays, because I actually felt more comfortable filing a complaint, serving it on the defendants. I had done that before I went to law school. Then I was like arguing some hyper-technical interpretation of the Immigration and Nationality Act, like some of these kick-ass deportation lawyers do in deportation court.
So, like in the early days before you decided to go over to the immigration and just do immigration only, where you were kind of doing everything, you were doing the threshold law. What was like? Were you making money? Like, were you actually making money? Like bringing home money where you could actually pay the bills, or were you struggling? I'm curious about that time.
Yeah, I know the first year the gross revenue of the firm was $60,000, $60,000 or maybe $80,000. I don't know how I paid Adele, but Adele didn't start till August. So I'd had some savings, and like I said, I'd paid off my loan. So I think the first year we made like 65, 70, and then the next year we made like 120. So we were making enough, but it was tight for sure.
And no doubt, like that, especially if you're doing any PI cases where you're having to fund expenses, that's tough. Like you did some criminal stuff too, right?
Well, that's what made me do the switch to immigration only. So I had a referral partner, Dan McMichael, and he and his partner, they were sort of winding down their practice, and they would keep sort of the straightforward, easier cases, and things where they thought there might be a little something, they would send to me. And so one of them was about this African-American guy who'd been arrested, and they misidentified him, and they kept him in jail for 2 months. And so I sued the St. Louis Police Department, and that was on a contingency, and that got me some press. And because of that press, I got roped into doing a pro bono criminal defense case, which I had no business doing. I was always willing to try new things, but we lost on summary judgment on the police department case, and my client got convicted, although eventually overturned on appeal. The pain of losing those two cases was exactly what I needed to say, I'm not dabbling in anything else anymore. I'm focusing on one thing, and I'm going to do it really well, and that's going to help me build out systems and learn it and become an expert at it.
So at what point did you start to see things were turning around, where you were building actually something that was going to be successful?
That's a good question. Well, truth be told, I'm a 10 quick start, and Adela is a pretty even-keeled person. So it was she and I for a long time, and we would have little helpers and stuff, but it wasn't until Amani came in 2016 that things really sort of got back into balance. Because I'm such a 10 quick start and a lower follow-through, I was doing all these things that I didn't necessarily always finish. Adela would say, hey, we needed to do an employee manual, or we needed to have meetings, or we needed to have a schedule. And I was like, yeah, that all sounds good. I just don't want to do that stuff. I just want to go sign up cases. So when Amani came, Amani's a one quick start. It really brought balance to the whole firm. And so that's when we started getting procedures, and that's really when we started getting traction and making momentum towards where we wanted to be.
Well, that's interesting, because that's quite a few years into the podcast. So we started the podcast. It was 2016, right around there?
I think July of 2015, and Amani came in May of 2016. Don't forget, I taught you that class at St. Louis U about how to run a law firm. I was fucking flat broke. So, it was a great example of, do as I say, not as I do. And actually, I think I learned some things teaching you that class that helped me make my firm better.
How much of that do you think that there is going on in the legal space?
Oh, I think there's a lot. I remember Seth used to tell me about, he had seen the books of someone who held themselves out as an expert. He goes, that person's flat broke.
Yeah, we see a lot of people they're just giving advice all the time. We kind of, I do have a lot of questions about a lot of them, but so, you have spent a lot of time on yourself. You spent a ton of time on the firm. Where do you think you get the most value? Is it investing in yourself or investing in the firm? I know that may be a really tough and tricky question to answer, but if you were going to invest a bunch of resources in either yourself as the person or your firm, Hacking Immigration Law, where do you think you would get the most bang for your buck?
I think we're all complicated people, and we all bring a lot of baggage to this. And there's things about me that have helped the firm succeed, but that have also brought a cost. I am compulsive about things. I made a video every day for a year and a half. I just get on these streaks, and you know how I get sort of determined, and I'm like, ah. So I have done a lot of work on myself, and I've been in therapy. I've had coaches. I've invested a lot in books and reading, and I try to be pretty contemplative. And I think that it's sort of gone hand in hand, that as we reach each plateau in the growth, I had to become better, or else we weren't going to move off that plateau. And in fact, I feel like I'm on a plateau right now. So I'm really trying to dig deep onto some blind spots I have, and some things I tell myself that might not necessarily be true, and things that I want to work on. And if I'm going to move us off this $4.5 million plane to the $10 million plane, I have to bring in more people who have expertise that I don't have, and I have to become a better boss and a better leader.
So you mentioned like your blind spots. Like what are some of your blind spots? And I guess what are you going to do about it? Because I like it is one of those things where you have invested a lot in like your education because you do go to at least I feel like it's less than what it used to be. You used to go to quite a bit of conferences to learn quite a bit. So I'm curious like what those blind spots are and then what you're going to do about it.
A big one that I don't like, a big one that I've had to work on is that I don't like confrontation. Amani teases me all the time. You sue Donald Trump, you sue the State Department, but you won't take an $8 return to Target for me because you don't want to talk to the cashier. And that's true, right? And I don't like confrontation. You know I don't like confrontation. I don't even necessarily like hard conversations, but I'm really coming to learn that when it comes to a firm of 50 people, that's a great responsibility of people relying on you to be your best and do your best. And sometimes you have to do things for the good of the firm. And when I say the firm, I don't mean the net profit or anything like that. I mean the overall health of the firm, to push yourself to tackle those things. So I'm actually practicing having hard conversations. I had a few this week, and I think that I've turned a bit of a corner. My therapist said yesterday that she's never seen me like this before, that I'm really sort of dialed in and focused, and I'm talking about what I want. And I think that's really ultimately, you and I have an episode, all about what do I want, which I think is one of my favorite episodes that we've done, because we focus on each word, what, and then do, and then I, and then want. And so I think that unless we're willing to say out loud and write down on paper what it is that we want and know that that's what we're working towards, if we don't do that, then we're just sort of farting around and spinning our wheels. And it's not until we really get purposeful and deliberate that things really start to change.
It's interesting you say that about yourself, because I've always viewed you as someone has been able to have those tough conversations. I've been able to like listen to you, because we've had to have tough conversations with people regarding the podcast, and that's as far as I'll go with it. But I've always felt like you've handled it really, really well, and like it's almost like you're like a natural at it. So I do find it kind of interesting that you struggle with that.
I'm an introvert. Ultimately, I'm an introvert. I get my energy working on my own. Another big thing for me, I mentioned this to you the other day, is that I really, really want to be liked. And sometimes I'll do things that if I said to myself objectively, do you really want to do that? I would say no. But do I really want to do that in some way of thinking that that'll make people like me? Then I'm more willing to do it. And so that what I'm trying to get to is a place where I'm operating from freedom, not from obligation or want.
I'm going to ask this question. This may be my last question.
Okay.
But depends on how you answer it. And I know it's not going to be the easiest question to answer, but is hacking immigration over the horizon? Could it be a $20 million company? And if so, what needs to happen for it to get there?
My buddy Brent has been crunching numbers, and he says that the U.S. immigration legal industry is an $8.7 billion industry. Now, a lot of that is corporate immigration, which is something we have not done much of. But with the chances of Donald Trump coming back and other things, I think we need to start diversifying at the firm. And so the employment immigration space is a place where we could really grow. So Brent says, if it's an $8.7 billion industry, why can't you get 87 million of that? So I don't know, but I think that there's potential there. I think there's need there. I mean, not that we're doing deportation or much of it, but like 25% of people go through deportation with a lawyer. 75% do not. A lot of that's because of money, but there's a lot of need out there. Whenever someone says, I want to become an immigration lawyer, I said, good, we need you. That's why I opened up the firm. I would try to refer these Muslim friends of mine to immigration lawyers, and they said, oh, I'm too busy. I don't need any more cases. Please don't send me any more cases. Like, that's crazy to me.
And I think that there's a lot of bad immigration lawyers out there too. And I'm not just saying that to disparage. And I don't know what about the nature of why it is. I've thought about this because I feel like you're sort of this anomaly that has really kind of put together a nice machine that does this really, really well. But I know a lot a lot of immigration lawyers that are just bad at business, like just terrible at business. And I don't know what it is about the characteristic.
I think I do. I think part of it is that I think the big thing is they have a good heart, that they come from a good place, and they want to help people. They want to, it's a nice practice area. Unlike like criminal law, when you are done defending a sex offender, they're not all that happy, right? I mean, they're not going to leave you a 5-star review. But immigration, you're helping change people's lives. You're giving benefits. So a lot of lawyers, they just get caught up in the thick of thin things, doing the next case, and nobody has really thought about. I don't think there aren't many bigger family-based or individual-based immigration firms in the country, because most immigration law firms are a lawyer and a paralegal who think they're too busy and they don't think about that other stuff. And maybe that's not what they want. But I do think when it comes to business, we've seen a lot in our group of people who've struggled. And I think it is ultimately that dichotomy. I think some people feel guilty about making money as an immigration lawyer.
All right, Jimmy. Well, I wish I had another hour to talk to you, because I do. There's a lot more I would want to dig into. I think at some point we should do like a long episode where we interview each other. I'll let you interview me next month, but we're going to wrap things up. Before I do, I want to remind everyone, join us in the big group. Search Maximum Lawyer. You can find us there. If you want to come to one of our quarterly masterminds, we've got Charlotte and we have Vegas left in this year, which is pretty exciting. I think Jimmy and I are really excited about Vegas. We got a pretty good speaker coming out to Charlotte, Dave D. So that's going to be pretty awesome. He's going to come out to speak in Charlotte with our guild members. So it's going to be really, really cool. Dave's awesome. Jim and I both loved hearing him talk. We've seen him at GKIC a long time ago. He's really amazing. We had him on the podcast. Good stuff. But if you're interested in seeing Dave, it's exclusive to guild members, maxlawguild.com. Actually, you know what? We opened that.
Actually, right. I was just going to say, it's not exclusive to guild members.
Yeah, that's when we did open up. I'm sorry about that. But I will tell you, the tickets are going to be sold out pretty quick.
It's full already.
Yeah. Yeah. So by the time this airs, that may be booked, but you should look into it, maxlawguild.com. All right. And if you don't mind leaving us a 5-star review, we would greatly appreciate it. Help spread the love to attorneys that need it. But Jimmy, what is your hack of the week?
All right. So although lawyers don't necessarily think of themselves as doing intake, you are in fact doing intake. And when you do intake, talking to potential clients, sometimes they have objections. And there's a great book by a sales guy named Jeb Blount, Blount, just called Objections. I've made my way through about a third of it. And if you or others in your firm are the ones talking to clients about things like price or speed or when can you file or why do I need you, that objections book really is a good framework for how to handle and overcome objections.
I like it. Very good stuff. All right. So mine is a really simple one. I don't think I've given this one, but the podcast that we're recording now, I'm using on our mini mic that's for traveling with, because I got this so that I could do remote podcasts, because sometimes I do like to record them from the house. But it is the Rode Mini mic. And if you're looking for it, it's NT USB Mini. I like it. It's really, really handy. It comes in a nice little traveling case. I can set it up in a matter of seconds. It's really, really handy. And so anyone that needs a mic that you use with your laptop, I'm using this with a laptop, little tiny USB cable. It's pretty handy. But that is my tip of the week.
Thanks for listening to the Maximum Lawyer Podcast. To stay in contact with your host and to access more content, go to MaximumLawyer.com. Have a great week and catch you next time.
Before you go, have you heard Jim and Tyson talk about the Guild on the podcast or in the Facebook group? If not, you're missing out on some really exciting things happening with Guild members and their law firms. The Guild includes a community, accountability, trainings, group coaching, and in-person events like our quarterly masterminds. Inside, you'll gain support, tap into a network of connections, and continue learning, a common theme among successful entrepreneurs. Investing in a community is like the self-care of business ownership. Surrounding yourself with other people who get it is crucial when you're creating a rock-solid foundation to build your business on, one that's strong enough to withstand setbacks, transitions, and growth. So head to MaximumLawyer.com/theguild to join now and get started today.